It started not with the roar of jets, but with a rising tension that had been building in the air for years, like the tightening of a bowstring drawn far too long. Israeli officials had been watching with growing dread as Iran inched closer to nuclear breakout capability. The intelligence was chilling. Uranium enrichment had crept toward 90%. Satellite images revealed suspicious construction, deeper tunnels, longer-range missiles being quietly deployed near Khamenei. It wasn't just speculation anymore, it was a ticking clock. Every day that passed without action, Israeli leaders believed, brought their people one step closer to annihilation. And on a calm June evening, as the world looked elsewhere, that clock stopped ticking. Israel moved. In a strike that would shake the foundation of Middle Eastern geopolitics, hundreds of Israeli jets screamed into Iranian airspace, crossing 1,000 miles of risk, resolve, and red lines. The operation, codenamed Rising Lion, was the culmination of years of planning and months of final countdowns. Mossad had already been working behind enemy lines, using every trick in its vast, shadowy playbook. Agents disguised as merchants, technicians, even drivers had slipped inside key nuclear facilities, planting bugs and gathering data. Tiny drones disguised as birds had surveilled rooftops, measuring radiation heat signatures. And perhaps most critical of all, cyber teams had been draining Iran's air defenses, infecting radar systems with malware, blacking out crucial eyes at just the right moment. Israel knew that brute force alone wouldn't do the job. Fordow, one of Iran's most heavily fortified uranium enrichment facilities, was buried 300 feet beneath a mountain. Others, like Natanz and Arak, had been hardened after years of threats. To even have a chance, Israel had to become a ghost before it became a storm. When the jets finally launched from bases in Israel, from carriers in the Mediterranean, and even through makeshift runways hidden in neutral territories, there was no formal declaration, no advance warning. Just the hum of wings slicing through air, and then the fiery roar of smart munitions tearing into concrete, steel, and silence. Natanz was hit first, wave after wave of bunker-busting bombs pounding its underground labyrinth. Then Isfahan, where missile silos and centrifuge halls erupted in synchronized bursts of flame. At Arak, the heavy water reactor cornerstone of Iran's plutonium program became a monument of fire. And then came the capital strikes. Tehran's military research centers and key missile command outposts were bombarded as alarms screamed and sirens wailed across the night sky. In Karaj, missiles took out advanced research labs. The scale was staggering. Over 330 precision bombs dropped, dozens of sorties executed with surgical precision, and behind each detonation, a message: "We know where you hide your secrets, and we will strike before you can use them." The world was stunned. Most governments, including the United States, had known something was brewing, but few expected such a sweeping operation to unfold in a single night. Iran's leadership, caught off guard, scrambled to respond. President Ibrahim Raisi appeared on national TV within hours, sweat beading on his forehead, promising revenge and declaring martyrs of the slain. Dozens of scientists, military officers, and engineers were killed some instantly, others trapped beneath the rubble of their own ambition. General Hossein Salami, the notorious IRGC commander, was confirmed dead after Israeli drones targeted a military convoy outside Qom. In the span of 12 hours, the hierarchy of Iran's nuclear program had been decapitated. But for every strike and every success, there was a price. In cities like Yazd, Shiraz, and Hamadan, families wept beside the remains of apartment blocks shaken by shockwaves. Civilian casualties, though not the goal, were inevitable. Over 600 Iranians were killed, and dozens of Israelis perished when retaliatory rockets pierced the Iron Dome and struck border towns. In the emotional aftermath, Israel was a nation gripped by a mix of sorrow, pride, and grim determination. Prime Minister Benjamin Gantz stood before the Knesset, his voice breaking as he spoke not only of security, but of survival. "We did not seek war," he said, "but we will never allow ourselves to be destroyed." The speech aired live in living rooms across Tel Aviv and Jerusalem, where parents held their children a little tighter and prayed this wasn't the beginning of something worse. In the synagogues, rabbis invoked the Exodus and the defense of Zion. Meanwhile, Iran seethed. Images of mass funerals flooded Tehran's, media portraits of young scientists smiling beside test equipment, now silent, now at. The Revolutionary Guard vowed a crescendo of fire, and within days, missile strikes from Lebanon and Syria rained down toward Israel's northern front. Yet the IDF stood ready, intercepting many, absorbing others, always watching the skies. And what of the world? Caught between horror and hesitance, the United Nations called for immediate ceasefire and escalation, but the air was thick with hypocrisy. In Washington, President Donald Trump returned to the public eye, suggesting the US might finish what Israel started. Bunker-busting bombs, long debated and never used, were suddenly being whispered about in Pentagon corridors. Gulf states expressed both support and fear for Israel's courage, fear that radiation might seep into their borders. Bushehr, Iran's lone civilian nuclear plant, was spared, but not without consequence. Water levels in the Persian Gulf were tested, tensions in the Strait of Hormuz rose, oil prices spiked, refugees fled border zones in droves. The Middle East, already a minefield of broken promises and shifting loyalties, teetered on the edge of broader war. Still, the core question loomed large. Did it work? Had Israel's bold gamble truly set back Iran's nuclear ambitions? According to post-strike satellite imagery and IAEA statements, enrichment was halted temporarily. Radiation leaks were not detected, indicating containment had held. But Fordow, the crown jewel of Iran's underground facilities, remained largely untouched. Hidden beneath rock and reinforced layers, it stood defiant, a symbol of both Iranian resilience and Israeli frustration. Intelligence suggested that backup centrifuges, mobile labs, and black site programs still existed, scattered across the country, unmarked, unseen. Iran may have been bloodied, but not broken. And so the clock, once stopped, began to tick again. Slower, maybe, but ticking all the same. Behind the headlines, it is easy to forget the human cost: the widowed mother in Kazvin, whose son worked night shifts, guarding a nuclear power station. The Israeli medic who watched her cousin's home burn in a Hezbollah rocket strike. The Iranian student in Paris who hasn't heard from his family since the night of the bombing. These are not just chess pieces in a geopolitical game. These are lives. Lives with birthdays, favorite songs, unfinished letters, and dreams buried beneath rubble. And while leaders talk about enrichment levels and strategic targets, these people live in the echo of every siren, every jet overhead, every prayer whispered in fear. Now, the region holds its breath. Will Iran retaliate with another wave of missile attacks? Will Hezbollah be unleashed in full? Could the US be drawn into a direct confrontation with Tehran? Although hope seems distant, could this be the shock that forces diplomacy back to the table? History tells us that fire rarely leads to peace, but history also remembers that there are moments when action is taken not because it's wanted, but because it's needed. Israel believes this was one of those moments, and perhaps, deep down, even those who condemn the strike feel a chilling sense of inevitability, that something was going to give, and it finally did. In the coming weeks, Iran will mourn and rebuild. Israel will remain on high alert. The world will watch for the next flashpoint. But amid the smoke and grief, one truth lingers like a shadow. The nuclear age has never been about weapons alone. It's about fear. Fear of annihilation. Fear of inaction. Fear that the other side might strike first. In that fear, nations act, sometimes with wisdom, sometimes with recklessness, but always with the weight of history on their shoulders. This was not just a strike, it was a cry of desperation. A defiant act from a nation that has been fighting for its survival since the day it was born.